The royal starship Silver Dawn drifted smoothly through the endless black of space. Its shining halls were filled with noble guards, servants, and diplomats from the great Veyari Empire. Everything inside was designed to be perfect. Bright marble walls, golden symbols of the Empire, and soft music that played in every corridor. But Princess Lysera hated perfection. At only 19 years old, she was already tired of being followed by guards every step, forced to sit through endless lessons on diplomacy, and told never to touch anything that was not proper for a princess. Her life was a cage, even if the cage was made of gold. The voyage was supposed to be important. The Silver Dawn carried her and several Veyari lords to a human fleet station for joint talks. Relations between humans and Veyari were still fragile. Every noble whispered warnings to her. Do not get too close to the humans. They are unpredictable, dangerous, strange. Lysera found that exciting. Humans had a reputation. They were not the oldest race nor the most powerful, but every story about them sounded like something from an adventure tale. They fought wars against impossible odds, explored stars no one else dared to enter, and used machines so crude that other species laughed, until the humans somehow won anyway. Lysera wanted to see them up close, so when her guards thought she was resting in her chambers, she quietly slipped away. She moved quickly through the long silver corridors, ignoring the sharp looks of servants who dared not stop her. The ship was massive, and many sections were forbidden to her, especially the joint human Veyari crew areas. But Lysera's heart beat faster as she headed that way. She wanted something forbidden. At last, she reached a heavy door at the end of a quiet passage. Strange symbols were carved above it in the human language. Lysera had studied some words, but she didn't recognize this one. The door slid open with a hiss. She stepped inside. The room was nothing like the perfect golden chambers of her people. It was dark, full of blinking lights, glowing panels, and humming machines. Large windows showed the endless stars outside, and at the very center sat a chair, with one man in it, the human pilot. He turned sharply when he heard the door. His eyes widened. "What? How did you get in here?" Lysera tilted her head, curious. He had short brown hair, a sharp jaw, and a uniform of deep blue. His hands rested on a strange wheel-like control. Unlike the cold stillness of Veyari machines, his controls looked alive, meant to be touched and moved by human hands. "I walked through the door," Lysera said simply. The human pilot stood. "This cabin is restricted. No one enters without clearance, especially not—" He stopped, staring at her royal robes, the silver crown resting lightly against her hair. His expression shifted to shock. "The princess?" Lysera smiled. "Yes, that is me." The pilot muttered something under his breath, a human curse she didn't understand. He rubbed his forehead like he had just stepped into trouble. "I'm Captain Daniel Hayes. You should not be here." Lysera ignored the warning and walked deeper into the cabin. She moved slowly, her fingers brushing across the glowing panels. Unlike Veyari designs, these machines felt warm, almost alive. "You fly the ship with this?" she asked, pointing at the wheel. Daniel sighed. "Yes, that's the manual control. Normally, the computer can fly itself, but I like to keep my hands ready, in case something goes wrong." "Strange," Lysera said, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Why would you do the work yourself when the machine can do it for you?" "Because machines fail," Daniel replied. "And when lives are on the line, I'd rather trust my own hands than hope the system doesn't crash." Lysera blinked. Among her people, no one would dare fly without full automation. To rely on one's own reaction instead of perfect machines was madness. Yet the way Daniel said it, she felt a shiver. It was not madness. It was confidence. She sat on a small step near his chair, ignoring his protests. "Tell me more. How do you control the ship? How do you keep us safe?" Daniel groaned. "Princess, you can't stay here. If anyone finds out, I'll lose my post. Probably worse." "Then don't tell anyone," she said with a grin. Her boldness surprised him. Most nobles he met treated humans like servants or curiosities, but this princess looked at him like he was fascinating. Dangerous, yes, but fascinating. For the next hour, Lysera bombarded him with questions. Why did humans have switches for everything? Why did they carry emergency weapons under the panels? Why did they always prepare for accidents that might never happen? Daniel answered carefully. He explained humanity's history, how Earth was a dangerous world full of storms, quakes, and predators. "We grew up expecting things to go wrong," he said. So we prepare. If we can't rely on nature, we rely on ourselves. Lysera listened wide-eyed. In the Empire, her life had been soft, predictable, and safe. But the human way sounded wild and free. She liked it. Finally, Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. Princess, I'm serious. You need to go back before someone notices. If the Veyari lords find you here, it won't just be me in trouble. It'll start a diplomatic fire. Lysera stood and looked him in the eyes. You saved me from boredom today. Captain Hayes, I will return. Before he could stop her, she slipped out the door, her silver robe trailing behind her. Daniel dropped into his chair, covering his face with his hands. Great, just great. The alien princess in my cabin. What could possibly go wrong? But deep down, a small part of him wondered if it really was so bad. Because when she had looked at him, she hadn't seen a human tool or a crude pilot. She had seen something more. The next morning, Captain Daniel Hayes told himself that the princess's visit had been a one-time mistake. She had wandered in out of curiosity, seen enough, and returned to her golden world of servants and nobles. He was wrong. When the cabin door slid open again, Daniel almost spilled his coffee. Princess Lysera walked in like she belonged there, her silver robes flowing behind her. 2 royal guards were visible down the corridor looking the other way, clearly fooled by her trick. Daniel groaned. Oh no, not again. Yes, again, Lysera said brightly. She stepped up to the pilot's chair and pointed at the glowing panels. Show me more. Yesterday you only told me about the wheel. Daniel put his cup down and stood. Princess, you can't just sneak in here every day. Someone's going to notice. Then you should teach me quickly before they do, she said, her eyes full of mischief. Daniel rubbed his forehead. He was a soldier, not a babysitter. He had faced pirates, smugglers, and even combat drills against stronger alien ships, but none of that prepared him for a stubborn alien princess who thought rules didn't apply to her. Still, a part of him respected her boldness. She wasn't afraid of humans, unlike most Veyari nobles. She looked at the machines with genuine curiosity. And against his better judgment, Daniel found himself answering her questions again. Lysera returned every day. Sometimes she slipped past guards in disguise. Sometimes she claimed she was going for exercise walks and ended up in the pilot's cabin. Each time Daniel tried to send her away, but she only laughed and asked more questions. Why do humans always carry weapons, even in safe zones? Why do you keep extra food rations hidden under your chair? Why do you always watch the radar, even when the computer is watching it for you? Daniel answered patiently at first, then with growing honesty. Because safety isn't real, he told her one evening. You can think you're safe, but danger can appear at any time. Pirates sabotage a star going unstable. Humans learn to always be ready. Lysera tilted her head. So you live every day expecting disaster? Daniel gave a half smile. Not expecting, preparing, that's different. We don't panic. We just refuse to be helpless. Lysera thought about those words for a long time. Outside the cabin, rumors began to spread. Servants whispered that the princess was missing during important meals. Guards argued in private, blaming each other for losing track of her. The Veyari nobles grew suspicious. One evening, her royal advisor, Lord Saren, scolded her. Your Highness, you cannot disappear without warning. Already the humans suspect strange behavior. You risk embarrassing your father, the Emperor. Lysera only smiled sweetly. I am not lost, Lord Saren. I am studying. Studying what? The advisor demanded. Lysera's eyes sparkled. Humans. Back in the cabin, she began to ask deeper questions. Not just about controls or machines, but about humanity itself. Why do humans explore? The galaxy is dangerous. Most races avoid risk. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars. Because we came from a world that tried to kill us every day. Earth was full of storms, predators, diseases, disasters. We learned to push forward anyway. Out there, he pointed at the stars. We find danger, yes, but we also find new chances, new hope. For us, risk is life, Lysera shivered. No Veyari would ever speak like that. Her people valued order, safety, and control. Yet here was a human speaking of risk as if it were joy. She began to admire him. Not just him, but all of humanity. Daniel noticed the change. The princess's questions were no longer playful curiosity. They were hungry, serious. She wanted to understand what made humans different. One evening, as he checked navigation, Lysera leaned closer. Captain Hayes, are humans afraid of death? Daniel's fingers froze over the controls. He glanced at her. Her silver eyes were sharp, waiting for an honest answer. Yes, he said softly. We're afraid, but we don't run from it. We fight it. We fight until the very last breath, because we believe every moment matters. We don't want safety bought by hiding. We want freedom bought by struggle. For a long time, Lysra said nothing. Then quietly she whispered, I wish my people thought like that. The days turned into a pattern. Officially, Lysra attended meetings, meals, and events with her people. Unofficially, she kept sneaking back to the cabin, listening to human stories of storms, wars, and survival. Daniel grew nervous. If the wrong person found out, the scandal would be huge. A human officer alone with an alien princess for hours? The Veari nobles would accuse him of corruption, maybe even abduction. Yet every time she smiled and leaned forward with bright eyes. He couldn't bring himself to send her away. She didn't look at him like a threat. She looked at him like a teacher, a guide. And maybe, Daniel admitted to himself, he enjoyed her company. One evening, the ship's alert system rang softly. Just a test, nothing serious. But Lysra jumped at the sound. What is it? She asked, clutching the side of the chair. Just a drill, Daniel said. The crew is testing the emergency alarms. Emergency alarms? She repeated. Daniel nodded. Humans run drills all the time. Fires, breaches, raids, you name it. We practice for disaster so that when it comes, we're ready. Lysra frowned. My people never practice for such things. We trust our machines. If something fails, the guards protect us. And what if the guards fail? Daniel asked quietly. Lysra had no answer. For the first time, she felt a seed of doubt about the perfect order of her empire. That night, Lysra stood at the wide window of her royal quarters, staring at the stars. She thought about the pilot's words, about his steady hands on the controls, about the human idea of always being ready. Her world suddenly felt fragile. She realized she no longer cared about the scoldings of her advisors or the warnings of her father. She wanted to know more. So the next day she returned again. Daniel was waiting, arms crossed. Princess, you're going to get me court-martialed, she smiled. Then I hope you think I'm worth it. He blinked. Her tone was playful, but her eyes were serious, and Daniel Hayes finally understood something dangerous. The alien princess wasn't just curious anymore. She was devoted. Outside the cabin, the rumors grew louder. A few crew members had already noticed her slipping away too often. Whispers spread among the Veari nobles. The princess is hiding something. Tension built, unseen but steady, like thunder before a storm. But inside the human pilot's cabin, Princess Lysra sat cross-legged on the floor, listening to Daniel describe how humans once crossed oceans in fragile wooden ships, risking storms and monsters, just to discover what lay beyond. Her eyes shone. To her, the human way no longer sounded reckless, it sounded free. And she decided that nothing, not her father, not the nobles, not the rules, was going to keep her from returning. Because she had found something precious in that cabin. Not just adventure, not just danger. She had found a truth her people had forgotten. To live fully, one must risk. The Silver Dawn had been traveling peacefully for weeks. The voyage was nearly at its halfway point, and soon they would reach the human fleet station, where the great talks were to begin. On the surface, everything looked calm. Nobles continued their endless meetings. Servants carried trays of food. Guards stood watch in the halls. But Daniel Hayes had learned long ago never to trust calm. He sat in the pilot's chair, eyes on the radar, hands resting near the manual controls. The ship was technically on autopilot, but he never let his guard down. Something in the back of his mind always whispered, "Be ready." That whisper proved right. It began with a flicker on the radar. A small dot far away, too faint for the computer to register as a threat. Daniel leaned closer. His instincts screamed. He tapped the console, switching to manual scans. The dot grew brighter. Then another appeared. Then another. Ships, pirate ships. Daniel's heart tightened. He hit the alert button. The alarms rang through the ship. Lights turned red. A deep voice spoke through the speakers. Unidentified vessels detected. Possible hostile approach. Within seconds, the corridors filled with shouts and running feet. Guards grabbed weapons. Nobles panicked. Servants hid behind doors. In her quarters, Princess Lysra felt the ship tremble as shields powered up. She rushed out, ignoring her attendants' protests, and ran straight for the one place she felt safe: the human pilot's cabin. Daniel's fingers flew over the controls, switching systems to manual. The autopilot was already reacting too slowly. The pirate ships were spreading in formation, ready to surround the Silver Dawn. The cabin door hissed open and Lysra burst inside, her robes trailing behind her. "Daniel!" she cried. "What is happening?" "Raiders," he said shortly. His eyes never left the screens. "Hostile ships. They want the cargo. Or the nobles. Or you." Lysra's stomach dropped. "The guards will panic if the defenses fail," Daniel finished. His jaw tightened. "And I think the defenses will fail." As if to prove him right, sparks burst from a panel on the side wall. The automated turrets that protected the ship had been hacked, shut down by enemy signals. The nobles outside screamed in terror as the ship shuddered under the first wave of enemy fire. Lysra grabbed the side of Daniel's chair. "What will you do?" Daniel's hands tightened on the manual controls. What humans always do: fly. The Silver Dawn lurched violently as Daniel pulled the ship into a sharp dive, something no Veyari computer would ever risk. Energy beams streaked past the windows, lighting up the stars. He twisted the wheel, throwing the ship between two asteroids. The nobles screamed over the intercom. "What are you doing?" "You'll destroy us!" Daniel ignored them. His eyes burned with focus, his reflexes sharp as lightning. The massive Veyari ship wasn't built for combat maneuvers, but in his hands it danced through space like a fighter. Lysra held on tightly, her heart racing. She had never seen anyone move like this. Every second seemed impossible, every dodge a miracle. Yet Daniel made it look natural. This was the human way. The pirates tried to surround them, but Daniel cut through their lines, twisting between enemy ships at reckless angles. The Silver Dawn's shields flared as glancing shots struck them, but he never gave the enemy a clear target. "Status of weapons?" Daniel barked. The Veyari officer on the comm stammered. "All turrets offline." We cannot fire," Daniel cursed under his breath. "Then we fight another way." He slammed the controls forward, sending the ship into a roll that pressed Lysra against the chair. The pirates fired again, but their shots missed, striking the asteroids instead. One of the raider ships exploded in its own trap. Lysra gasped. You are turning their strength against them." Daniel allowed a thin smile. "That's how humans survive. When we're outnumbered, we use everything, even the enemy's weapons." For over an hour, Daniel pushed the Silver Dawn through impossible maneuvers. His uniform was soaked with sweat, his hands aching from the strain. But his eyes never wavered. Every time Lysra thought the ship would be destroyed, he found a path. The nobles stopped screaming. Instead, silence filled the comms. Even the proud Veyari lords realized something shocking. A single human pilot was doing what their entire automated system could not. Finally, the pirate ships broke formation. 2 of them limped away, damaged by their own crossfire. The rest fled into the black void, unwilling to waste more ships against an enemy that refused to die. The battle was over. The ship floated in silence. Fires burned in some corridors, but the hull held. The nobles gathered in the grand hall, pale and shaken. Lysra still stood in the cabin, staring at Daniel. His chest rose and fell heavily, but his eyes were sharp, alive. "You saved us," she whispered. Daniel wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. "No, I kept us alive long enough to scare them off. They'll be back stronger." But Lysra shook her head. "No one else could have done what you just did. Not my people, not the nobles. Only you." Her voice was full of awe. For the first time in her life, she understood why the galaxy whispered about humans. Why they were feared. Why they were respected. They were survivors, fighters, refusers of death. And she realized, with a jolt of emotion, that she admired Daniel more than anyone she had ever known. Later that night, the nobles held a meeting. Voices rose in anger. "This human endangered us," one shouted. "He risked the ship with his reckless flying," another added. "He saved us," Lysra cut in, her voice sharp. The room fell silent. The young princess stood tall, her silver eyes blazing. "If not for Captain Hayes, we would be prisoners or corpses. You call him reckless, but he is the reason we are alive." The nobles shifted uncomfortably. None dared argue with the princess. But Daniel knew this was only the beginning. To the Vayari elite, human defiance was dangerous. They would not forgive easily. As the meeting broke, Lysera slipped away and returned to the cabin. Daniel was still there, checking systems, running repairs. She stood in the doorway watching him. "You risked everything for us," she said softly. Daniel didn't look up. "That's my job." "No," Lysera said firmly. She stepped closer. "That is not just your job. That is who you are, a human. You fight when no one else can. You protect even when the odds are hopeless." Finally, Daniel glanced at her. His eyes met hers, and for a moment silence hung between them. Lysera's heart pounded. She had never felt this before, not fear, not duty, but something else. "Something new," she whispered. "I will not leave your side." Daniel blinked. "Princess, I mean it," she said, her voice steady. "I saw what you did today. I saw what it means to be human. And I cannot turn away, not now, not ever." Her words hung in the cabin like a promise. The Silver Dawn floated through space, scarred but alive. Repairs had begun, but the ship was shaken, its crew unsettled. The nobles whispered in the halls, their proud voices turned bitter and suspicious. They were not whispering about the raiders, they were whispering about the human pilot. In the grand hall, the Vayari lords gathered with sharp faces and folded arms. Gold robes shimmered under the lights, but there was no calm in the room. Lord Saren, Lysera's royal advisor, struck his cane against the floor. "This is intolerable," he declared. "Our princess spends her hours hidden in the human's cabin, while that reckless man nearly destroyed us with his wild flying. We must act before scandal ruins us all." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Another lord raised his hand. "The Emperor sent us here for peace, not chaos. If word spreads that his daughter disobeys protocol, worse, that she favors a human above her own kind, it will shame the Empire." Lysera stood at the far end of the hall, silent but listening. Her silver eyes narrowed. Then she spoke, her voice cutting through the noise. "You are wrong." The nobles froze. All heads turned toward the princess. She stepped forward, her long silver robe trailing behind her. Her presence was calm but fierce, and for the first time, she did not speak like a girl being lectured. She spoke like a woman giving judgment. "You call Captain Hayes reckless," Lysera continued, her voice sharp. "Yet none of you lifted a hand to save us. When the defenses failed, when the ship was seconds from destruction, who acted? Who fought? Who saved your lives?" The hall was silent. No one answered. Lysera's eyes blazed. "It was the human. He did what none of you could. He risked everything, not for glory, not for reward, but because it was right." Lord Tyrion's face darkened. "Your Highness, you do not understand what you say. Humans act without order, without discipline. Their bravery is chaos. You cannot compare their crude instincts to the wisdom of the Vayari." Lysera stepped closer, her voice rising. "Wisdom? Your wisdom would have left us dead in space. Your order froze when the machines failed. But the human, he moved. He decided, he fought. That is not chaos. That is strength." Gasps filled the hall. Nobles whispered in shock. No princess had ever spoken this way in public. Lord Siren clenched his cane. "You dare defy your people for the sake of a human?" Lysera raised her chin. "Yes, I do." That night the Emperor himself sent a message across the stars. His face appeared on the great hollow screen, stern and cold. His crown glowed with the light of authority. "Daughter," he said, his voice heavy with command, "your advisors tell me troubling things. You dishonor your station with your attachment to this human. You will end this behavior at once. Return to your quarters. Speak no more of this." Lysera stood tall before the screen. Behind her, Daniel lingered silently, his arms crossed, watching. She bowed her head respectfully. "Father, I love you. I respect you. But I will not obey this order." The nobles gasped. Several dropped to their knees in shock. No one disobeyed the Emperor. Lysera lifted her head, her silver eyes burning with fire. "I saw the truth with my own eyes. Humans are not savages. They are not reckless children. They are survivors. They are protectors, and I will not pretend otherwise." The Emperor's face hardened. "You are a princess of the Vayari. You speak for your people, not for your heart." "My heart speaks the truth," Lysera said firmly. "And the truth is this: we need humanity. They are what we are not. Without them, we will fall the first time the machines break, the first time the enemy strikes when we are unprepared. I will not turn my back on that truth." For a long moment, silence hung between father and daughter. Then the Emperor's image flickered and vanished, leaving the hall in tense quiet. Later in the cabin, Daniel leaned against the wall, arms folded. You realize what you've done, right? You just stood up to your entire empire, your father, everyone. Lysra turned to him, her silver hair shining under the cabin lights. I told you once, Daniel. I will not leave your side, and now they all know it. He shook his head. You've started a fire. The nobles will see this as betrayal. Your father will see it as rebellion. You've made yourself a target. Lysra stepped closer. And yet I feel free. For the first time in my life, I spoke my own truth, and I do not regret it. Daniel stared at her for a moment, then let out a low breath. Princess, you're going to get me executed. Lysra smiled softly. Then we will face that together. The next days were full of tension. Nobles avoided Lysra in the halls. Guards whispered, unsure whether to protect her or watch her. Servants bowed lower than ever, afraid of being caught on the wrong side of politics. But Lysra no longer cared. She spent nearly all her time in the pilot's cabin. She asked Daniel about human battles, about history, about what drove his people to keep going when others would have surrendered. Daniel told her stories of Earth, of soldiers who fought against overwhelming odds, of explorers who crossed oceans in wooden ships, of firemen who ran into burning buildings when everyone else ran out. Lysra listened with shining eyes. My people hide from risk. Yours embrace it. That is why you frighten the galaxy. And that is why I admire you. Daniel looked away, uncomfortable with her devotion. Yet a part of him swelled with pride. He had fought countless battles, but none felt as heavy as the look in her eyes. One evening, the nobles made their move. A group of armored guards appeared outside the cabin, blocking the door. Daniel stood quickly, hand near his sidearm. Lysra stepped in front of him. The door slid open and Lord Saren entered, flanked by soldiers. His voice was cold. Princess Lysra, by order of the Emperor, you are confined to your quarters until we return to Veyari space. This involvement with the human ends now. Lysra's chin lifted. No, I will not return to my quarters. I will remain here. Saren's eyes narrowed. You shame your family. Do you not understand the risk you take? Do you not understand the insult you bring upon your people? Lysra's voice rang like steel. The insult is yours, Lord Saren. You and the others who would rather cling to pride than admit we were saved by human courage. I saw what Captain Hayes did. He gave us life when machines and lords failed. If that is shame, then I will carry it proudly. The guards shifted uncomfortably. Even they could not deny the truth of her words. Saren's face twisted with fury. You leave us no choice. When we return to the Empire, you will face judgment for this rebellion. Lysra stood unshaken. So be it, but until then I remain here, in this cabin, by the side of the one who saved us all. Daniel glanced at her, shock written on his face. She had just bound herself to him in front of her people. No hesitation, no fear. The guards slowly withdrew, unwilling to drag her by force. The door closed. Silence filled the cabin. Daniel let out a low whistle. Well, Princess, you just declared war on your own court. Lysra turned to him, her smile calm and fierce. No, Daniel. I declared loyalty. To the truth. To the courage of humanity. And I will never turn back. Far beyond the silver dawn, in the darkness of space, pirate ships gathered again. Stronger this time. The enemy was not finished. The stars stretched endlessly around the silver dawn, black and silent, until they were broken by streaks of red light. The raiders had returned. This time their fleet was larger, stronger, and better organized. Daniel Hayes's hands tightened on the controls. He knew their patterns, their weapons, their usual tactics, but now they had numbers on their side, and the human instinct that had carried him through before would be tested beyond any limit. Lysra stood beside him, calm yet alert. Her silver eyes tracked every movement on the holographic radar. She had insisted on being in the cabin, refusing safety in the royal quarters. If I must face danger, she said quietly, I will face it here, with you. Daniel nodded, feeling a surge of admiration and fear. The princess's courage matched humanity's, daring, fearless, and unyielding. The raider ships opened fire, energy beams streaking toward the silver dawn. The shields flared under impact. Daniel immediately switched to manual control, spinning the ship in a sudden arc to evade the worst of the assault. Hold on, he shouted. Lysra braced herself against the edge of the console, her silver hair whipping around her face. The Veyari crew scrambled, panicking slightly, but Daniel's calm presence commanded them. Divert power to the shields. Target the weapon's junction points. Move. The Silver Dawn rolled through the starfield, narrowly avoiding a barrage that could have shattered the hull. Each motion was precise, instinctive. Daniel had spent years trusting his hands more than machines, and now every second of that training mattered. A raider ship tried to ram them from the side. Daniel twisted the wheel, letting the asteroid belt nearby act as a natural barrier. The raider's ship exploded against a rock, but others closed in. Lysera leaned over the console, pointing at patterns of enemy movement. Aim there! Their left flank is weak. Daniel blinked. You're reading this like a human? I learned from you, she said simply. I am with you. I see what you see. He allowed a small smile. Good. Then let's show them what happens when humans and aliens work together. The battle raged. Energy beams painted the void red and gold. Explosions rocked the Silver Dawn, and alarms screamed across the ship. Daniel guided it through impossible maneuvers, looping around asteroids, diving through narrow gaps, twisting to evade fire while lining up counterattacks. The Veyari crew struggled to follow, but Lysera's presence inspired them. She called out strategic points, encouraged frightened officers, and even worked the auxiliary weapon systems herself under Daniel's guidance. The humans had survived countless impossible battles, but now the aliens saw firsthand why. Raw instinct, courage under fire, and the refusal to surrender, even when surrounded by death, made them unstoppable. One raider ship managed to slip behind them, aiming directly for the princess's quarters. Daniel's jaw clenched. Not on my watch, he muttered. He twisted the ship violently, intercepting the raider in a deadly spin. The enemy collided with another asteroid and disintegrated. Lysera exhaled, shaking slightly. That was too close. Never too close, Daniel said, his tone steady, though his hands ached from constant control. We're alive. That's what matters, her gaze softened. You are incredible. I understand now why humans are feared, respected, admired. You do the impossible and make it look easy. Daniel glanced at her, eyes meeting hers. She wasn't afraid, not really. She had chosen to face danger, and in doing so, she had embraced the very spirit that made humans legendary. The battle dragged on for hours. Daniel's skill and Lysera's insight kept the Silver Dawn one step ahead of the enemy. Slowly, the raiders began to falter, losing ships to miscalculated attacks and collisions in the asteroid belt. Finally, the remaining enemy ships retreated into the darkness, battered and broken. The Silver Dawn floated among the stars, scarred but victorious. Lysera collapsed into a chair, exhausted but exhilarated. Daniel leaned back, letting his hands rest, finally able to breathe again. You did it, Lysera whispered. You saved us all, again. Daniel shrugged, a faint smile crossing his face. Not just me. You helped, and maybe. Humans are easier to work with when someone believes in them. Lysera laughed softly. I believe in you. The news spread quickly. When the nobles gathered to discuss the aftermath, there was no anger in Lysera's voice. Instead, she spoke with authority, clarity, and pride. Captain Hayes did what my people could not. He saved our lives and our ship. If you call him reckless, I call him courageous. If you call him a threat, I call him an ally. And I choose allies over pride. Even the most stubborn lords remained silent. They could argue all they wanted back on Veyari space, but here, on this ship, the truth was undeniable. That night, the cabin was quiet. Repairs continued, but the danger had passed. Lysera sat beside Daniel at the pilot's chair. I will stay, she said softly. No order can make me leave. Daniel looked at her, his expression serious but calm. You realize what you've done, right? You've tied yourself to me and to humanity openly. Your father will be furious. Your nobles will resist. You might even face exile or worse. Lysera placed a hand on his shoulder. I have seen the truth. Humans fight when no one else will. Humans survive when no one else believes. I choose to learn from them. I choose to be with them. Nothing else matters. Daniel paused, feeling the weight of her words. She was not just curious anymore. She was devoted, and he could not turn her away, not even if he wanted to. Then, he said quietly, I guess you're not leaving. Lysera smiled, her silver eyes sparkling with determination and warmth. I told you, I will stay. Not just because I want to, but because I must. I belong here beside humanity's courage. Outside the cabin, the Veyari crew and even some of the nobles began to see the truth. Humans were not merely strange or reckless, they were indispensable. Their grit, skill, and refusal to surrender were lessons no one could ignore. Lysera's example, her choice, inspired even the hesitant officers. Slowly, respect for humanity spread among them, and as Daniel guided the Silver Dawn toward the next station, Lysera remained at his side, learning, observing, and preparing to face the galaxy in a way no Veyari princess ever had. The stars stretched before them, infinite and full of danger, full of wonder, and for the first time, both human and alien knew something important. Together, they were unstoppable. The cabin door slid shut, enclosing them in quiet and safety. Lysera leaned back, watching Daniel adjust the controls. "You know," she said softly, "I think I could get used to this. To humans, to your way of life, to you." Daniel glanced at her, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "You already have." She laughed quietly, resting her hand on the console. "Then I'm staying, forever. I told you I won't leave." And in that moment, surrounded by the stars and hum of the ship, the two of them knew it was true. No one could tear them apart. No force in the galaxy could change her mind. Because courage, loyalty, and the human spirit had won her heart.